For centuries, humanity has been fascinated by the oceans, seas and lakes of our planet because they are as fascinating as they are mysterious. But despite all this interest and curiosity, so far we have only been able to observe a very small part of these mysterious waters. In fact, the number of people who have visited the deepest part of our oceans is much smaller than the number of people who have been to the moon. While 24 people have so far been to the moon, only 18 people have visited the deepest part of the oceans. Oceans and seas cover more than 2/3 of the Earth's surface, yet 95% of them remain unexplored and unmapped. If we were to look at the habitats of the tens of thousands of species we discover and catalogue every year, we would find that some of them live in seas and oceans. In other words, there may be thousands of species in the world's waters that have not yet been discovered. This raises the question, what else could be lurking in these bleak depths? Could there be another truth behind the strange phenomena and missing ships in the oceans? In fact, most supposedly mysterious oceanic phenomena have a fairly simple explanation, but there are still a few oceanic mysteries that remain unexplained. In this video, we will examine the evidence of strange phenomena reported by sailors around the world, including the inexplicable disappearance of crews and strange creatures that allegedly exist underwater. We begin our adventure with the strange events that have happened for some. In February 1945, a fierce battle was taking place on the island of Iwo Jima in the Pacific Ocean. The USV Marine Division was pinned down on the island by Japanese forces, but despite being under deadly enemy fire, a Marine named Tony Stin fearlessly fought his way to the safety of his wounded comrades and ran against enemy artillery to obtain ammunition for the rest of his platoon. During the fighting, Stin single-handedly blew up Japanese entrenchments repeatedly and inflicted serious damage on the Japanese. However, 10 days later he was shot dead by a sniper. In 1970, a ship of the same name was commissioned by the US Navy. The ship had been neglected for many years, so it changed course and embarked on a series of exercises that were supposed to call at different ports. Shortly afterwards, however, the ship was badly shaken by an unexpected collision. The impact caused great panic on board, and the ship's commander began to investigate the cause of the incident. Investigations revealed that the ship had collided with a large underwater object that had not been recorded by the monitoring systems. This does not rule out the possibility of hitting a ledge on the seabed, but an examination of the charts did not reveal any anomalies on the seabed. This mysterious collision added to the anxiety on board. Thinking that there might be a submarine or a sunken shipwreck on board, the commander ordered the sailors to go on deck and search the water for wreckage or a lifeboat. However, despite detailed searches, nothing could be seen in the water. Meanwhile, the ship's technicians reported that the sonar system could not be restarted. The ship was therefore forced to return to the Long Beach Naval Shipyard in Los Angeles. When the ship was taken into the maintenance dry dock, repair crews thoroughly inspected the ship's hull and during this work found that about 10% of the ship's sonar dome was missing and the remaining parts were completely inoperable. Interestingly, however, the outer casing of the sonar sensor was covered in deep cuts and tears of varying sizes. As the technicians were removing the connections around the sensor, they saw several objects fall from the device to the ground. When they looked at the objects that had fallen at their feet, they realized that they were actually teeth and claws. Upon further examination, about 100 organic samples and the remains of teeth and claws were removed from the reinforced rubber surrounding the damaged sensor. Among the objects were teeth that looked very similar to the teeth on the arms of giant squid. But some of these teeth were about 3 centimeters long, 5 times longer than the teeth on the arms of any giant squid ever documented by marine biologists. While no one has been able to say exactly what hit the ship, it is safe to say that it was something of gigantic proportions. If it was really close to the size of a giant squid, the creature would have been at least 45 meters long. That's about 3 times longer than any previously discovered giant squid. All these events have caused great curiosity and concern among the ship's crew and authorities, and this mysterious collision is still not fully explained. In the early hours of February 38, 1904, the Japanese fleet attacked the Russian fleet anchored at Port Arthur. This attack was carried out without warning, hours before the Japanese issued a formal declaration of war later in the day. This caught the Russians unprepared and resulted in the loss of many ships and crews. The Russians therefore called in hundreds of civilian ships, including the Ivan Vasily, a steamship previously used in the Baltic Sea to transport cargo between Russia and Finland. The Ivan Vasili's captain, Sivanan, was given the task of delivering war supplies from St. Petersburg to Russian ships stationed at the Gazebo stockyard. The crew's forced voyage would take them farther than they had ever traveled before, around the Cape of Africa and everywhere in between. The voyage first started in the North Sea, from where it headed to the Atlantic Ocean and along the west coast of Africa. However, during this voyage, the coal reserves on board were very low. Therefore, the captain decided to visit the city of Cape Town in South Africa to obtain coal. After leaving the harbor, they set sail. However, when the ship was about 4,000 kilometers away from Cape Town, the crew informed the captain that there was a strange presence on board. No one knew exactly what this presence was, but there were rumors of an invisible presence among them and sightings of shapeless black figures passing through the walls. Also, those on watch on the ship reported hearing footsteps on the deck of the ship after midnight, but when they arrived, they could see nothing. As the frequency and intensity of these incidents increased, the crew's nerves became more frayed, and eventually the sailors began to fight, hurling accusations at each other. In the following days, things only got worse. Just 2 days before Ivan Vasili sailed for Port Arthur, a rather strange incident occurred during the night. Some sailors who were asleep suddenly jumped out of their beds, screamed and ran around in fear. The night watchmen didn't know what to do, because even though they tried to calm the men down, they failed. Moreover, the fear on board was spreading like a plague, and even those who were just watching these events were suddenly running around in a frenzy. Some sailors were attacking each other, fighting and trying to kill each other. The next night, a sailor was found on deck screaming and scratching his face. Other crew members went to the unfortunate man, tried to calm him down and asked him what had happened. The man explained that he was walking on deck when he saw a strange, shiny being that looked like a human being and shouted towards him. The being looked at him and quickly started running in the direction of the lifeboats. The man claimed that the entity's gaze filled him with despair and suicidal thoughts and then began to attack him. Hearing these allegations, the captain ordered a search all over the ship, but nothing was found. Nevertheless, the captain decided to increase the number of sailors on deck at night. Despite the incidents on board in the following days, the ship continued on its way to the port of Hong Kong. But the captain's promise was not enough to prevent events on board, for on the third night of the voyage, the presence was once again seen on board, and a sailor committed suicide by stabbing himself. 2 nights later, one of the stevedores was found dead, his lifeless eyes wide open and his hands outstretched as if to ward off an attack. But these were not the last incidents on board. A few days after this incident, the ship arrived in Hong Kong and was abandoned by the entire crew except for the first mate Christensen and 5 sailors. Captain Hansen spent several weeks trying to find replacements for the people who had fled the ship and finally gathered his crew and set sail for Turkiv, their next duty station, and they were off. But for Captain Hansen, this ship would be the end of him too, because just before arriving in Australia, Captain Hansen was filmed on his camera and committed suicide with a pistol. In the following days, the Russian Navy could not find people to work on the ship again because of the stories about the ship. So the Ivan Vasili spent the next years slowly rusting where it was abandoned. We have come to the end of the first part of the series. If you like this kind of videos, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video. Goodbye.